Have you ever had a dream so big it scared you? A dream that felt like it was living in a world completely separate from your own. For me, that dream was the stage. Not just any stage, but the big one. The one with blinding lights, a sea of faces, and an energy so powerful it could knock you off your feet. But my world wasn't that stage. My world was a tiny room, for walls that had seen more of my fear than my talent. This room was my sanctuary and my prison. It was where I first picked up a guitar, my fingers clumsy and unsure. It was where I wrote my first song, the lyrics scribbled on a napkin, words that felt more honest than anything I'd ever said out loud. And it was where I'd practiced for hours, singing to my reflection in the window, pretending the city lights outside were a cheering crowd. In that room, I was a star. The moment I stepped outside, I was just me. Scared, invisible, and overwhelmingly average. The gap between the person I was in my room and the person I wanted to be on stage felt like a canyon. I'd go to open mic nights, my guitar case feeling like it was filled with lead. I'd sign my name on the list, my hand shaking so badly I could barely read it afterwards. And more often than not, when my name was called, I'd be gone. I'd have bolted out the back door, the fear a cold, tight knot in my stomach. The voice in my head was relentless. You're not good enough. They're all going to laugh. Who do you think you are? That voice was my biggest critic and my most loyal companion. Every no I got, whether it was from a venue owner or from myself, felt like another brick in the wall between me and my dream. I watched other performers, people who seemed so fearless, and I couldn't understand how they did it. How did they walk into the light while I was so comfortable in the shadows? It felt like they had a secret I wasn't in on. The self-doubt was consuming. It colored everything. Every song I wrote seemed childish. Every chord I played sounded wrong. My dream was starting to feel more like a delusion. One rainy Tuesday, I hit my lowest point. I had just bailed on another open mic, practically running away from the opportunity. I sat in my car, rain lashing against the windshield, and I just broke down. It was that ugly, soul-shaking kind of cry. I was so tired. Tired of being scared. Tired of letting that voice win. Tired of being a spectator in my own life. It was in that moment, surrounded by the sound of the rain and my own quiet sobs, that something shifted. It wasn't a lightning bolt of inspiration. It was a quiet, stubborn whisper that said, what if they're wrong? What if that voice in my head was the only one telling me I couldn't do it? I realized fear wasn't a stop sign. It was a compass. It was pointing directly at the thing I wanted most. The fear wasn't there to stop me. It was there to show me the way. So, I made a deal with myself. I wouldn't try to get rid of the fear. I would take it with me. I would let it sit in the passenger seat, but I wouldn't let it drive. My new goal wasn't to be fearless. It was to be brave. I started small. I recorded myself playing and actually listened back, forcing myself to find one thing I liked. Then I sent a recording to a friend. My heart was pounding as I hit send, but their response is simple. This is beautiful. Felt like a lifeline. These small acts of courage started to build on each other. They were tiny cracks of light in the fortress of doubt I had built around myself. I went back to that same open mic the next week. My hands were still shaking. My voice still wavered. But this time when they called my name, I walked toward the stage. That first performance was a blur. The lights were as bright as I'd imagined, and I couldn't really see anyone's face, which was probably a good thing. I remember closing my eyes and just playing. I poured every bit of fear, every bit of doubt, and every ounce of hope into that 3-minute song. When I finished, there was a moment of absolute silence. It felt like an eternity. And then, applause. It wasn't a stadium roaring, but it was real. It was for me. In that moment, I wasn't the star from my bedroom window reflection. I was a performer, a terrified, imperfect, but very real performer. That night didn't magically solve everything. I still got nervous. I still had moments of crippling doubt. But now, I knew I could walk through it. I played more open mics. I started getting asked to play longer sets. I connected with other musicians. We shared our fears, our terrible gigs, our small victories. I learned that I wasn't alone. Everyone was just as scared. The secret wasn't that they were fearless. The secret was they showed up anyway. My small room started to expand. It was no longer just four walls. It was every coffee shop, every small bar, every local festival stage I played on. Each performance was a conversation with the audience and a negotiation with my fear. Some nights, the fear barely whispered. Other nights, it screamed, but I learned to sing over it. My dream wasn't on some distant, impossible stage anymore. I was building it. One song, one performance, one small act of bravery at a time. And then the email came, an invitation to open for a band I had admired for years, at a real venue. The kind with a proper green room and a sound system that didn't crackle. The kind I used to dream about from my tiny room. The fear came roaring back, louder than ever before. This is too big. You're not ready. But this time, there was another voice, quieter but steadier. The voice that had been built from every small win, every applause, every time I chose to be brave. It said, "Yes, you are." The night of the show, standing backstage, I could feel the familiar knot in my stomach. I could hear the murmur of the crowd, a sound that once terrified me. But looking out from the wings, at the stage bathed in light, I didn't see a place of judgment. I saw an invitation. I thought about that person in their small room, singing to their reflection. I wanted to honor their dream. I wanted to show them what was possible. I took a deep breath, walked out into the light, and the fear came with me. But as I hit the first chord and my voice filled the space, it wasn't fear I felt. It was a homecoming. It was a feeling of finally, after all this time, being exactly where I was supposed to be. The journey from that small room to this big stage wasn't about becoming fearless. It was about learning to fear less. It was about realizing that the biggest stage you'll ever have to perform on is the one in your own mind. And once you can win over that crowd, you can face any other. If you have a dream that scares you, please don't run from it. Let it be your guide. Start small. Be kind to yourself, and celebrate every tiny act of courage. Your journey is yours alone, but you are not alone in your fear. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more. I'll see you in the next one. The first beat finally dropped. It was low, deep, almost like a heartbeat. For a brief second, nothing moved. Then the performer lifted their head. Their eyes opened slowly, not to look at the judges or the audience, but to look inward. The fear was still there, but it no longer controlled them. The music wrapped around their body like a familiar friend. The first step was small, not dramatic, not loud, but it was honest. Their feet pressed firmly against the stage floor. The body followed the rhythm naturally, like it had been waiting for this moment for years. Arms moved with purpose. Not to impress, but to express. The audience leaned forward without realizing it. Something about the movement felt real. The music grew stronger. Each beat carried weight. Each pause carried meaning. The performer's body told a story without words. A story of quiet rooms, long nights, and hidden dreams. The shoulders curved slightly, showing the pressure they had carried. Then the chest opened wide, as if letting go of years of fear. A soft turn, a sharp stop, a slow reach upward. It felt like watching someone fight with invisible walls and slowly break through them. The judges stopped writing notes. One of them rested their chin on their hand, eyes fixed on the stage. Another leaned back, eyebrows raised, clearly surprised. No one smiled yet, but no one looked bored either. That alone was a victory. The lighting shifted. Warm golden tones filled the stage, casting long shadows behind the performer. The shadows moved with them, like memories following every step. The music changed again. Now it was faster, stronger, louder. The performer responded with energy that had been held back for too long. Jumps became higher, movements sharper, spins faster. The body moved freely now, no longer careful, no longer hiding. The audience gasped during one sudden drop to the floor. It was clean, controlled, powerful. They rose slowly, breathing hard, sweat beginning to show on their face, but their eyes were alive, focused, present. For the first time, They truly belonged on this stage. Halfway through the performance, something shifted. The dance was no longer about proving anything. It became a release. Every doubt spoken by others, every night of silence, every moment of almost giving up, all of it poured out through movement. Hands shook on purpose now. Steps stumbled, then recovered. T-body bent, then stood tall again. It was imperfect, and that made it beautiful. The audience began to clap softly with the rhythm. Not loud, not forced. Shoes, natural. The performer did not look at them. They didn't need to. The music reached its highest point. Lights grew brighter. The stage felt bigger. The moment felt heavier. With one final burst of energy, the performer leaped forward, landed strong and held still. The music stopped. Complete silence filled the room. For one long second, no one moved. Then the audience exploded. Applause crashed through the space like a wave. People stood up without thinking. Cheers filled the air. Some clapped above their heads. Others wiped their eyes. The performers stayed frozen for a moment, shocked. They hadn't expected this. Slowly, they straightened up. Their chest rose and fell. Hands trembled. Eyes widened as they finally looked around and took it all in. The judges stood too. One of them clapped slowly at first, then faster. Another nodded, smiling wide. A third judge looked deeply moved, hands pressed together. The performer bowed their head, overwhelmed. A judge stepped forward and spoke. They did not talk about technique. They did not talk about trends. They talked about truth, about how the performance felt real, about how it told a story without asking permission, about how it made them feel something they didn't expect. The performer listened, barely breathing. Their heart felt like it might burst. Then it happened. A judge reached for the button. Time seemed too slow. The performer's eyes followed the movement, unsure what it meant. The audience began to scream, sensing what was coming. The button was pressed. Golden light burst into the air. Confetti rained down from above, shining as it fell. The stage transformed instantly, covered in gold. The moment felt unreal, like a dream happening while awake. The performer dropped to their knees. Hands covered their face. Tears came without warning. Not quiet tears. Real ones. Years of silence broke in that moment. The audience cheered louder than before. Some people shouted words of support. Others simply clapped, smiling through tears. The performer stayed there for a moment, letting it happen, feeling the floor beneath them, hearing the noise, seeing the gold fall around them. They had made it, not because they were perfect, but because they were honest. As the confetti slowly settled, the performer stood again. Their face was red, eyes wet, smile shaking but real. They bowed deeply, not just to the judges, not just to the audience, but to the journey. Later, backstage felt different. The same hallway, the same photos on the walls. But now, when the performer walked past them, they felt connected, not intimidated. Staff members smiled. Someone offered water. Another gave a quiet thumbs up. The performer sat alone for a moment, breathing slowly, trying to calm their heart. They thought about the small room again, the cold floor, the choir music, the lonely nights. And for the first time, those memories did not hurt. They felt proud. This moment did not erase the past. Life would still be hard. The road ahead would still be long, but something important had changed. They no longer doubted their place in the world. They had learned something powerful. Dreams do not need permission. Talent does not need noise. And belief, even when quiet, can grow strong enough to shake a stage. The lights dimmed. The night moved on. But for the performer, a new chapter had begun. Not just on television, but inside.